My best friend disappeared from my life, and honestly, even now, years later, I still don't fully understand why it happened. We were really close in high school, like actual best friends in the way where somebody just becomes naturally built into your everyday life without you even realizing it. We hung out constantly, had the same routines, the same humor, and the same conversations every single day. And after a certain point, it just felt normal that he was always there. We'd send each other random videos, talk about stupid stuff for hours, and make plans without even really planning them because we were always just around each other anyway. At one point, I genuinely believed we'd probably stay friends for life because when you're younger, you don't really think about how temporary some relationships or friendships can actually be. You just assume that the people closest to you now will somehow still be there years later. But after graduation, we ended up going to different colleges and universities, and like most friendships after high school, things naturally slowed down a little bit. We stopped talking every single day, got busy with our own lives, and started adjusting to new environments, new schedules, and making new friends, meeting new people. At the time, none of it felt alarming to me at all because that's just what happens when people grow up. There wasn't any massive argument between us, no tension. There wasn't even some awkward drift where you can slowly tell the friendship is dying. At least from my perspective, everything still felt normal. We just talked less often because life got in the way, and I genuinely thought eventually we'd reconnect naturally like most old friends do. Then after around 6 or 7 months of barely talking, I remembered it was his birthday one day and decided I'd send him a quick message. I still remember how normal and casual that moment felt at first. I opened Facebook, typed his name in, and when nothing showed up, I honestly thought the app was glitching, or maybe he changed his profile name or deactivated his account or something stupid like that. It didn't immediately register in my brain what was actually happening, because the idea that somebody that close to me would deliberately cut me off without saying anything genuinely never crossed my mind. But then I checked Instagram. Nothing. Then Snapchat. Nothing there either. And I just remember sitting there, staring at my phone while this really weird feeling slowly started settling in my chest. Because piece by piece, it became obvious that this wasn't an accident or some social media bug. He had removed me, blocked me everywhere, completely cut me off without a single explanation, without a message, without any warning whatsoever. Just gone. And honestly, I think what made it hurt so much wasn't even the fact that the friendship ended. It was the confusion. Because when somebody hurts you directly, at least your brain has something concrete to hold on to. You can point at a fight, an argument, betrayal, some moment where things clearly fell apart. But this felt completely different. It felt like someone quietly erased you from their life while you were still under the impression everything was okay, and your brain almost can't process that properly because there's no ending to actually understand. I remember checking in with a few mutual friends because I genuinely thought maybe something bigger was going on, like maybe he disappeared from everybody's life or deleted all his socials entirely. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case at all. Other people from high school still had him added normally. Even the other guy from our little trio friend group wasn't blocked or removed. He got ignored sometimes or left on red, sure, but he wasn't completely cut off the way I was. And I can't lie, realizing that part messed with me a lot more than I expected, because suddenly it stopped feeling like a random occurrence and it started feeling personal. Once that thought enters your head, it kind of consumes you for a while. You start replaying old conversations in your mind, trying to search for some hidden moment where things changed without you noticing. I remember genuinely sitting there, thinking about stupid, tiny interactions from months earlier, wondering if I accidentally said something wrong, or annoyed him somehow, or changed as a person without realizing it. You start questioning your own memory because your brain desperately wants an explanation for why someone who once cared about you suddenly decided they didn't want you around anymore. And you know what the worst part is? There's nobody there to actually ask. I did hear later on through other people that his family was apparently going through some difficult times, although I never knew the exact details, and a part of me wondered if maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe he was isolating himself, or maybe there were things happening behind the scenes that I'll never fully understand. But even then, it still didn't fully explain why I specifically got treated that way. And after a while, I realized I could spend years trying to solve a question that might never actually have an answer. So eventually, time passed, and little by little, I moved on with my life. It wasn't like I stopped caring completely one day, but more in the sense that I slowly accepted the fact that I was probably never going to get closure from him. And if I mentally kept waiting for an explanation, I was only going to keep hurting myself. It was honestly the first friendship in my entire life that had ever ended that abruptly and that coldly. I've drifted apart from people before like everyone else has, but usually it's gradual and mutual. Usually both people slowly move in different directions until one day you just don't talk much anymore. This was completely different. It was like somebody closed the door while I was still standing there confused on the other side. And then, almost 2 years later, the weirdest part of the story happened. Out of absolutely nowhere, he messaged me. I still remember the feeling of seeing his name pop up again because it genuinely caught me off guard. It was one of those moments where your stomach kind of drops for a second because suddenly somebody you convinced yourself was gone forever is right there in front of you again. And the message itself was so casual too, which somehow made it even harder to process. He asked, "Hey bro, how are you doing? How's the new city?" That was it. No acknowledgement of disappearing, no apology, no explanation for blocking me everywhere. Nothing. Just a completely normal message like no time had passed at all. And honestly, seeing that message reopened emotions I didn't even realize were still sitting there. Part of me missed my friend immediately, of course. Part of me wanted answers. Part of me even wanted to pretend like none of it ever happened just so things could go back to the way they used to be. But at the same time, another part of me kept thinking about how deeply that whole experience affected me and how you can't really disappear from somebody's life for years, hurt them without explanation, and then casually walk back in pretending like everything is normal. So I took some time to think about how I wanted to respond because, truthfully, I didn't even know what I felt in that moment. I was hurt, confused, angry, nostalgic, relieved, and hopeful all at the same time. But you know what's the funny thing? Before I could even figure out what to say, he unsent the message. And honestly, I think that somehow upset me even more than the original ghosting did. Because it felt like reopening a wound that never fully healed, only to cut it open again and disappear for a second time. And deep down, I think the fact he unsent the message told me everything I needed to know. I think on some level, he realized how abrupt and hurtful the ghosting had actually been, and maybe he didn't know how to confront it anymore after all that time. So I just replied with a simple question mark. Because despite everything, despite all the hurt and confusion, I still wanted to give him one more chance to explain himself. But he read my message and never responded. After that, I finally made the decision to let the friendship go completely. Not out of revenge, not because I hated him, and honestly not because I wanted him to feel guilty. I genuinely hope he's doing okay in life right now. But I realized I couldn't keep allowing somebody to walk in and out of my life whenever they felt like it, while I carried all the emotional weight of what happened. So I removed him as a friend, made my accounts private, and moved on with my life. Every once in a while, he still tries to follow me again. But at this point, I think I've accepted something really difficult about life, which is that not everybody who enters your life is meant to stay there forever. Some people are only there for one chapter of your story, even if at one point you genuinely believe they'd be there until the end of it. And honestly, I think what hurt the most was never losing the friendship itself. it was losing somebody I trusted deeply without ever understanding why it happened. Because there's something uniquely painful about being left without closure. Your brain keeps searching for answers long after the person is already gone. But if there's one thing that experience taught me, is that you have to be learning how to love yourself and build your own peace internally, because people can leave at any time. Sometimes gradually, sometimes suddenly, and sometimes without giving you any explanation at all. And as painful as it is, sometimes you can miss somebody deeply, appreciate the memories you had with them, genuinely wish them well, and still know they no longer deserve access to your life. Honestly, I think that's okay too. Thanks for watching Rardo, and I'll see you in the next video.